Hello Kindred Longevity Lifestyle Designers, this is Gavin here with secretsoflongevity.com. A topic that has been sort of my focus as of late in terms of my inquiry into reading about health has largely been around this idea of addictions, habits, both good and bad, and what creates them, and as well as just pleasure. So understanding what drives people to move towards pleasure and how we get caught into bad habit patterns that can result in addictions. In my opinion, one's health is largely denoted by your lifestyle, and all these different aspects of our lifestyle can boil down to good and bad habits. So the more bad habits you have in your life, these sort of patterns of habitual behavior that is not for our best health is obviously going to detract from it. So by understanding how these patterns work in our body, we can then learn how to undo them, and hopefully you can take that and run with it and improve your life in any way that you see fit, that you are able to. So we have to first acknowledge that a lot of the things that people get wrapped up in have a foundation in a very primal drive. So this is our need for calorically dense foods, so fats and sugars. Our palates are designed for them, as well as salt. So we very much gravitate to those things, and in our modern day culture with very high processed foods, we have the oversaturation of these things in there with tons of vegetable and all sorts of other fats, hydrogenated fats, all these things to make foods taste a certain way. You mix in salt and or sugar, and everything's a combination of these things with some other few macronutrients thrown in the mix. So that's the idea of people becoming addicted to junk food, is there's a response that the body has, which is somewhat complicated, but there's a loop with dopamine that drives us towards these things, and then obviously there's also opiate-like chemicals that our brain releases when we get that pleasure, satisfaction from indulging in something that isn't for our best health. But even things that are good for our health can actually have this response. So we want to sort of tailor our lifestyle towards these healthier options. And of course, these primal drives include a variety of things. So whether it's just basic relaxation, you can get literally addicted to not doing anything. A lot of hunter-gatherer societies don't exercise. Their exercise is foraging and just what they do day-to-day basis. So in modern culture, we've created exercise to make up for the fact that we're not doing exercise all day for work, and so there's a drive to not do it because it's a very odd way that we move in the world when we try to exercise. And it doesn't totally fit with our physiology, you could say. So ways to get around that is to try and do more stuff that fits with our physiology, but it's also to recognize that it's a fairly unnatural thing and that we have a lot of resistance to doing it. And you have to, again, build in that good habit pattern of regular exercise and notice the benefits and how good it makes you feel, and hopefully create that new pattern in the brain that overrides the drive to be sedentary, because that in and of itself is addictive, especially when you factor in things like the junk food in combination with entertainment, video games, computer, movies, television. And of course the other big drive is sexual in nature, and with the advent of a whole host of modern day things that we have at our fingertips, big one being pornography, but of course there's IRL resources as well that people can get into negative patterns with. There's obviously going to be the healthy versions of any of those things, but again, we have to recognize that dopamine response that comes into play there, and literally any of these things can have addictive qualities to them. But at the other end, we also have to recognize that our drives do have a healthy side to them, and we need to acknowledge that and not get too extreme, because then you start seeing the extremes of extreme austerity. With sexuality, you have, think of priests and the Pope and everything that's going on right now in the Vatican. Or when it comes to food, you have like the extremism of extreme health, which you have sort of like this Dr. Kellogg type mentality, which is sort of the origins of the health movement, where you have the first mainstream indoctrination of people into vegetarianism, and obviously down the road you have natural hygiene and raw foodism and all these very extreme ways of doing things that humans never did. And we know that
knowledge is power. Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
And so by knowing this, knowing how our brain works and that we have these drives, then we can start to manipulate our environment to suit and get us the results we want, and also to, just basically avoid and get out of those negative patterns. So essentially to turn over a new leaf, or sometimes it's multiple leaves. So to understand how these patterns are formed, a great analogy is the idea of just imagining your mind or your brain, because these are neural networks, we could say, or the way neurons connect up. Imagine your brain as like a big grassy field. It's all very even and smooth. And as you learn things, it's like walking through the field in a certain way. So that creates a path, neural pathways. And the more you do a certain thing, whether it's playing an instrument, learning how to work with some sort of tool, learning how to do a math problem, anything we learn creates these pathways. Even when we're younger, obviously, we learn more basic stuff. But through our lives, we continue to create pathways with whatever it is we do on a habitual basis. But when we get into patterns of doing things that are unhealthy for us, our brain doesn't acknowledge that it's healthy or not. There's that neuroplasticity where we just learn how to do these things and we get better at it. So with addictions, it's these things that give us that dopamine hit, or the dopamine gives us the drive. It's the opiates that we're really seeking, that sort of pleasure place that we get to. And over time, as we continue to get that, the pleasure goes down, the amount that we get from that amount. So then that has to increase, or it has to become more intense in the way that we get it. That's when you have people, going to richer foods that are more processed, more chemically laden, and all that, or you have extremes of pornography, or you have the extremes of laziness and apathy and just sitting on the couch watching TV. Unfortunately, the more you walk a path, the more that grass sort of dissipates, it flattens out, and eventually you're going to get the dirt, and you're eventually going to get like a little rivet. As you keep walking, you break open the dirt even, and it starts to really form a very solid path. If you were to suddenly give up on that path, maybe it was even a drug addiction, and you were trying to create another path to make up for that, that path will start to grow grass again and will fill back in. But if it was really deep, it's likely in your lifetime it's never going to completely look the same as a patch of grass that had never been walked on before. So depending on the degree of your addiction or the issue you had, you might never be able to walk down that path again. That's why, alcoholics, when they're in AA and they've gone through the proper process, if they were a really intense alcoholic, they generally can't touch even a drop of alcohol. Even when there's people who drink very responsibly and can use alcohol in a wonderful way without getting, the need to drink to a high degree. So that's something you have to take into account, is if you've been someone that is prone to overindulging in any one thing, you need to create a new pathway, get rid of that, and essentially start to know what the warning signs are when you start to get close to perhaps going down that path again. And, do your best to stay away from it. Get whatever help it is you need. Don't just tackle this stuff on your own if it's a real serious addiction, especially when it comes to drugs and alcohol. So another side to this is that idea of becoming your own master, or becoming your own teacher, or being in control of yourself. A lot of people have problems with this. So there's this idea of dominance and submission with your own self. There's that sort of higher rational brain, which we want to be in control of us, and then we have that sort of lower self that has these drives, and we do not want to have that side of ourselves take over and just totally direct our lives, because that's where people get into the problems with junk food or being lazy and sitting on the couch all day. For people who don't have that latent ability to control their lives in that way, that's when you start looking at coaches, therapists, anyone that can give you feedback on your life and help you create these better patterns to initiate change for the better in one's life. And of course, that's totally valid. Seek those out if you need to, but also learn that you're trying to create this in yourself so that you are in control of your own health. And to be able to do these things, you have to build it over time. So just like taking on a new exercise program, you're forming a new path. You don't want to take on this massive thing and fail on it because you try to do too much at once. You want to just start and get that, that rut going in the grass, and then as it gets deeper and more pronounced, as you create that pathway in the brain, specifically with the neural pathways, with the discipline, that's when these things will fall into place and you start creating all these good things in your life. So let me know what you thought about the ideas in this video. I also have a video I did not too long ago, which I'll link to here, which goes into more depth about using dopamine stimulating foods, superfoods, herbs to sort of help get you out of addiction, but also to help in creating these goals. So use some of the foods I talk about, or even the recipe I talk about in this video, to motivate yourself to attain whatever goal it is you're looking to create. So like, favorite, and share the video if you feel so inclined, and with that, I'll talk to you next time. Take care and embrace life without limits.